big Saturday at Gulfstream Park coming up. It is Fountain of Youth Day. And on these big days at Gulfstream, they they have the best big days, right? Like of the big days when they just stack them with these stakes, like Pegasus Day, Holy Bull Days like this, Fountain of Youth, Florida Derby. There's so many of these days, and it seems like their days just have such great racing all throughout the card. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing. Yes, and I may be a little bit biased, but yes, they have the big days, the good big
So I
days.
had to bring Barry on when we talk about a good Gulfstream card, and we can kick back. I'll just go full. I'll go full screen on our DRF. I wanted to show our beautiful faces for a moment, just so they know who's talking. It's myself.
Ah!
It's the sniper Barry Spears, one of my good buddies. You see us all over Twitter, social media, talking racing, and we're gonna dive into this really good card at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. We're gonna talk about the stakes races on the card, and we'll look at the DRF past performances. If you ever handicapping the races, I'm always using DRF. We always pull up Formulator because it's so easy to go race replay, chart, pedigree information, trainer statistics, whatever you need, you can get it within just a few clicks. And Barry, what's also cool about these big days, not only do you get the stakes all throughout the card, but you get the strong maiden races, and then you'll get allowance races like the third race, for example. We're not really going to talk about it, but just to pull it up, like with all these familiar names, Olympic Runner, Rise the Guy, AP Secret, Prevalence, Candy Tycoon, Coinage, all these horses we've seen in stakes races through the years. Like this is a stakes race, but it's basically disguised as, like a strong allowance race.
Yeah, there's another one too. Race 7 is like
Yep,
that as well. Yeah, I mean, it's the place to be right
it
now.
is.
So, this card is really good, start to finish. I mean, there's really not anything weak here. I mean,
Nope.
the whole card is the field sizes are good. The competition level is good. There's a lot of competitive races. I think there's only one in that stakes sequence that's kind of has a standout, but the
And
rest of them are pretty competitive.
we got Kentucky Derby points on the line. You've got the 2-year-old champ from last year making his 3-year-old debut in the Fountain of Youth. So not only are there great betting races, big stakes, but you'll also see some of the stars on the card. Let's dive into the stakes races, buddy. This one is the Colonel Liam, and it's named after a former very, very nice stakes winner himself and a horse who had some good success at Gulfstream Park. This is a mile turf race for 3-year-olds. In looking at this race, some of the horses that'll take some support towards the outside, the 9 Dude in Colorado, 3-1 morning line favorite. He comes out of the Kitten's Joy. And he's been really good in his career. He hasn't done a whole lot wrong. The number 6 Santorini was a recent maiden special weight winner on the turf. He'll likely get some support. But you have, a horse like Bluebird's Over, who's a graded stakes winner on the synthetic, trying the turf. A horse like Web Slinger, who was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He came back and was impressive just a few weeks ago on February the 11th. Ballooney is an import for Chad Brown. Who are some of the horses that you're looking at in this one?
You actually, hit it right over the head with those two, Web Slinger and Bluebird's Over. They're really interesting in this spot.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I know you've always been a fan of this 5, the Bluebird's Over, right? I
yeah,
think you hit this horse at least one of these times we talked about, and you had this one.
yeah, I had the debut,
Yep.
but it's just I don't know what you really can make of Dude in Colorado in this race. I mean, I tend to try to play against favorites, especially ones that draw to the outside where there's, they this horse you would have to think has to work a little bit to get to the front.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If that's the case, then you know a horse that's probably going to be favored, going to have to be used from the outside to get to the lead. I'm going to try to play against,
Yep.
and there's a lot of options here. I mean, literally the first 4 horses: Bapio, OK Boomer, Baloney, Web Slinger, and then you can even add Bluebirds Over.
All of them.
All of them
I'm
have a huge shot. I mean,
absolutely.
I really don't know what the board is going to look like in this race, but if let's say Dune Colorado's 2-1 or lower, I mean, how can you? How
No way.
I can't do it.
No, and
So
he seems kind of like you said. He's going to be a little one-dimensional in this race because he's going to have to go from way out there too. So, and there could be some other speed in here with a horse like Bapio. from the inside, at least flashing some speed. Boomer's shown some versatility in his too. I kind of like him the most, I think. Okay, Boomer. I thought his race was pretty impressive last time out. It was very different from his debut race. His dam is also a multiple group stakes winner. So, I mean, he's just done literally nothing wrong. He took a big step forward, and if he just takes another small step forward, that puts him right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if this is Thursday before the race, so I personally, if I was going to make a decision right now, it'd be Web Slinger.
Yeah.
I mean, the
At the
only race that
8-1,
he's run, if you want to say ran poorly, was his Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf race, but this horse was caught wide literally the whole way,
and it
and
wasn't even that bad. He was only beat
no,
4
he was
lengths.
4 lengths. He was
Yeah.
right there. I mean, and he's improving. That's the thing that really gets me on, on board with a horse like that.
It was a good start for him in his first time back, first time at 3, and his first start back from the Breeders' Cup. He he was like way back early, and then he makes this early move and he just sustains it. It was visually pretty impressive there. I have no problem with him at all. Yeah, I did like 2-4 as sort of my top tier that I'm going to be using in all of the exotics. I like Boomer and I think Web Slinger the most. I don't really have any knocks on Balloony. We're going to see a couple different imports like this that are sort of wild cards all throughout the card. There's a few of them that sort of are kind of tricky to read too, because they're all coming off of like 4, 5, 6 month layoffs where they haven't been running recently, and they're shipping in and
imports. Yeah,
and this is like this horse, for example, we only saw run at 2. So the 6 months between where we've last seen him and now at 3, that's a lot of development for these
could be.
horses. Or
regression.
Or regression, right? No, exactly. Like for the horses that he's facing, a lot of them have developed and shown improvement, and he may be just behind. So it makes him like a tricky read, especially for a horse who will probably get bet. He probably will get bet just off of connections. But Web Slinger feels like, if he's between 6 and 10-1, that's a very fair price for him in here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always skeptical first time North America, anyways.
Yeah.
Especially horses coming from France. The ground over there seems to be a little bit softer, and I think those horses tend to like a little bit of give. They may like a firmer than what they're getting, right?
But not they want a little softer than what we have.
Correct.
Right. So like something sort of in between.
Exactly. So I mean, I'd like to give those kind of horses a race, especially when they get pounded at the windows.
Yeah, you watch them, and if they beat you at 5-2 or something, you don't really worry too much.
Don't really care.
You can see, and maybe you play them if they move up in a better spot and they're a little bit more playable sometime down the line. But that's the first of the stakes races that goes as race number 5 on the card, the really good Saturday card at Gulfstream Park. We move right next door to the very one. You and I liked Lady Rockstar as one of the horses we liked in the filly and mare turf, and she ran well. She ran third that day.
She really did.
And she comes back here, and she'll be like one of the major players in this race. I think they're going to go 1 mile and 3/8 in here. Fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up, and this one's on the turf. So, just from a talking point, she's super honest, and she's been in really nice form right now, and that's a good race. Just a repeat of that makes her a player in here. So how are you sort of looking at this race and kind of talking about her?
Yeah, it's another situation where, the horse on the outside has speed, and there's other speed in here.
I'm against her in this spot for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, she's a nice horse, but I don't know what she's gonna do. I mean, they don't really like to go to the lead, but what else are you gonna do here?
I mean, she's not
what kind
really
of trip is she gonna get?
Exactly. She's not really fast. She just gets the lead in some of those like New York races where they're not going very fast, and she's inherited it, and that's when she's been at her best. But I'm watching her in this spot, and I'm definitely against her. And so with that, a horse even like Lady Rockstar does give you fine value if you're playing against a horse like Virginia Joy, who's probably going to be 2-1.
At least probably shorter than that.
off
but
those
that's
connections.
okay. That's what we want. And we want
Yep.
people to to
Yeah.
bet the 10. The 4 horse, My Lady,
Yeah.
looks like made like I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard read because this horse hasn't been out since October. Didn't run that great, but has a race in North American style.
Hmm.
Because I don't know if you've ever seen how they run races in Germany and stuff like that.
Much
It's
different.
it's much different because they're really, 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 really slow early.
Yeah.
And
And
you
it's a
got to think that
difficult
horses like that
transition.
are right. And having that one long race at Woodbine under her belt can only do her good. The problem is she just hasn't been out in a long time.
Yeah. And
And
if she's around this price, that's at least a fair price, right?
sure,
Like 8 to 1 ish, above 5 to 1, that's at least giving you some value to represent the questions that we have. But I totally agree. She's the three that I looked at in here were 3, 4, and 6 in trying to beat the 10.
yeah,
And we hit on Lady Rockstar. Completely agree. My Lady, I think that second start now will really help her. She's been in the Brown Barn now for a while, and then I looked at Transient, who will go second off the bench and sort of got the first start back off of the bench. She showed a little bit of improvement. And sometimes we see these mares get a little bit better as they start to get older. She's still relatively lightly raced for being a 5-year-old. She's only raced 11 times. And I actually like the fact that she's able to string some races together. So if I'm trying to beat the 10, I'm going to throw her in some exotics, at least in under spots and along with the 3 and the 4.
yeah, absolutely. And I'll even throw one more in there,
Please.
because I think this horse has a shot. Um, Depending on what goes on with Chad's other horse, and it's Higher Truth to 7.
Yep.
There's a situation where that horse can kind of shake free and get on the lead by herself.
Mm-hmm.
If that
Fresh.
happens, I think she's going to be very, very tough. But you have a horse like the 2 beside herself that has some zip,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that horse has the class. So even if that horse gets in front of Higher Truth can probably sit off that one and run a really, really good race. I
Yeah.
think that one falls into a good trip. It's just a matter of if this horse can finish it off.
Yeah, so that next tier of horses, if you are really playable in here, if you take a shot against the outside horse, Virginia Joy, and I think that's a good approach and you can sort of take your pick of a lot of the ones that we mentioned and see who's the best on the board. This is early on, and it's the 6th race, so it's sort of an in between race. So this might be a good race to play. If you're playing a race individually or if you're playing some sort of pick threes, might be a fun race to start that here and play against that outside horse. And see if you can catch one of these horses at 5, 6 to 1 or so. And yeah.
And I'm probably going to put my foot in my mouth, but one horse I am against is the 8 Ensemble. I do not like that horse at all. I think that
Yeah, I'm not
35,000 optional claimer that this horse just ran away on the synthetic was just a weak race all the
middle
way
move to
around.
the lead and then
It
just
was
was
perfect
gone.
trip, and that's
Yeah.
why he got the buyer, she did. But yeah, totally, totally against that horse at all costs in
And
this
she
race.
probably will get bet a little bit off of that race. And her turf form overall hasn't been that great. So yeah, I'm not using as well ensemble. Let's a look at race number 6. Yeah, you mentioned that
It's
7.
one of those things that is a really underrated skill is eliminating runners rather than
Yeah,
adding.
absolutely.
Knowing who's not going to win is pretty much as equally as important as trying to figure out who's going to win.
Especially when you can eliminate the horses that are going to take money, right? The one
Exactly.
and you can turn in, okay, a couple of these are just, they don't really fit. One or two of these, whether or not they win, they're going to be too short for their chances to win this race. And then you narrow it down in every race. And that ends up being a lot of the time why, you and Matt and myself, when we do our shows, sometimes we're on the same horses because that's sort of the process you go through time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, hey, look, this horse is 9 to 5. This horse is 5 to 2. I'm not really even going to start looking with them, right? Like right off the bat, I'm saying they're a little too short for their chances of winning this race. Now there's maybe 2 or 3 horses that are 30 to 1 or 25 that might be they can't really win. Now we're in that range of who can fit in here, and that's, we make it down to like 3 or 4 horses sometimes, and that's what you have to do as a gambler and as
Well,
a handicapper.
well, I know when I handicap and I go to strategize for the way I'm going to play, if I feel confident that I can bet against a favorite, those are my favorite plays.
Absolutely.
Favorite races to play because in my mind, I already know I got the favorite beat. It's a
Yep.
matter of who's going to win and how much they're going to pay.
And I just got to find the right one.
Right, exactly. And that's how you get into the attack mode, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where you want to attack races like that
Get
and
really
and and
aggressive.
get yourself right and get yourself in a position to win. Either coming through that race or, in verticals
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. And that's where you can get creative. And that's what opens up your playbooks so you can, fire away
At
and
the
catch a
exact, then
really
you
nice
have
one.
exactly. So we keep rolling along on this Saturday Gulfstream Park card. Yeah, Barry mentioned that 7th race, which is fun too, because you get High Oak, White
Wayburn.
Barrio, Wayburn, Coastal Defense. We've seen in stakes races. It's a lot of familiar names. Collaborate, who I played last year in the Gulfstream Park Mile behind Speaker's Corner and Fearless. I liked him a lot that day, and he just got outrun by horses who are a little bit classier than him. That's a fun race. In race number 7, not a stakes, but certainly very quality. As we move to race number 8, which is a stakes race, it's the Canadian Turf, and we'll see a pretty heavy favorite in here with Emmanuel, who was good as a 3-year-old last year, Barry. I mean, overall, he has not done much wrong in his career. He has the Saratoga Derby that he didn't really fire in a tough race, and that was the race that sent him to the bench, and he had a few months off before that. So if we just eliminate the August 6th race and look at the rest of his form, it's very good. He was 4th in the Fountain of Youth last year on this same undercard. He was 3rd in the Bluegrass behind Zandon and Smile Happy, and at the time those two were good. And then he
Mhm.
came back and won when they tried the turf with him for the first time. So overall, he's not been a bad horse. He's done very good work, and he's going to make his second start back as a 4-year-old. What do you do with him though? Do you think he's a horse to play? Do you sort of toss him? How are you looking at this race?
I'm tending to think that he may have run too good in that comebacker.
Mm-hmm. Regress a little bit.
I think he broke the track record at the distance in that race, and I think it was kind of a perfect trip. And I usually tend to shy away from horses coming back off perfect trips like that run, career best buyers because it's usually not duplicated. Sometimes it does happen where, the setup is exactly the same, and I don't think it is in this race because I think this horse is going to have to be forced to go to the lead or be very close to the lead, and I don't really think that's perfect for what Emmanuel wants to do. I know he has won that way in the past, albeit it was on dirt. And one time on the turf in the Pennine Ridge, he kind of went wire to wire, but there was really nothing in that race. Um, so at a short price, I'm going to have to try to look elsewhere.
Yeah,
I
the outside there are a couple horses that are probably going to have to be
Right, then I
affordably
have to
placed
go.
too.
Right, the
You know,
10 definitely, the 9
mm-hmm.
and the 8,
the yeah, all three of
even the
those
1, has some zip and probably will have to kind of
English B. Mm-hmm. They could all
yeah,
be forwardly placed.
right.
Any combinations of them, and then that makes it difficult for Emmanuel at a shorter price. So, who are some of the horses you're looking at in here?
Um I think Fort Washington is very, very interesting at a big price. I sincerely doubt that this horse is going to go off 15 to 1. Um, but I can definitely see this horse coming off the layoff and improving for Suge. It's kind of what he does anyway. Um, it's just a matter of getting this horse in the race early. Jose Ortiz doesn't like to sit way back anyway, so I think he's going to
A
try at
good
least to
fit.
get right. And I think he's going to at least try to get this horse in the race a little bit earlier than he has been, like in the past 3 races. He's been way, way back, like dead last, and comes on fast. If he's a little bit closer, I think this horse might have a better shot. Um, Shadow Sphinx is another one. who really needed that tune up in the last race, but at least lately has been trouble finishing races off,
Yeah.
which is concerning, but has some races, comparable to what's in here at 8-1, definitely on my radar.
Yeah, the one that I'm going to be throwing in is the 5 Good Governance, who I think is set to run a pretty big one. So in the Fort Lauderdale, and this horse might just get overlooked a bit because in these two races was 60-1 and 48-1, so was way dismissed on the board, but ran really well even in the transition over from the Chad Brown born. The form has still stuck, and Anna Mia has done a really good job with this horse in these two races, because that Fort Lauderdale only beaten, a length and 3/4, and then came back. And let's watch the trip for Good Governance in
It
the
was almost like
Pegasus.
the same field, though, actually. The Fort
Yeah.
Lauderdale feels real similar to this race.
Yeah. And this is a horse who was the 2. And again, most people probably don't remember Good Governance trip in the Pegasus because
It
they
wasn't
weren't
good.
playing. Yeah, because they weren't
It,
playing Good Governance too. But it's like, oh, this 50-1 shot.
it wasn't good,
But it was
especially in the
not
stretch. Got into
not a
traffic
great
trouble.
trip. So the
Yeah.
2 got bumped a little bit at the start and is traveling towards the back of the pack. You can see the 2 in the blue silks. And one more bid was up front. King Cause there, Wit. Atone ends up winning this race. And Atone sits a really nice trip. We like Atone. We talked about this race when we handicapped and then went through the card. But Good Governance is dealing with some traffic inside, and then it's like a total tease because it looks like Good Governance is going to move through on the inside and get some room, and then just gets blocked. See, right here, the 2 at the top of the lane.
Nowhere to
So
go.
looks like you're going to get through at the inside. It's like, oh, nice. Okay, cool. We can move through. And then all of a sudden it just tightens up. There's just there's no room. The 3 in front of you, you're just at a total wall. The 13's backing up. Watch the 2 continue to look for room down there with just nowhere to go, and was not beat a whole heck of a lot, and was right in that flight of horses. Good Governance, I think, fits pretty well in here. You're definitely not going to get that big of a price, but again, if as big as he did last time, but 6-8-1 in this field, I'm okay with that. Especially if we're looking for horses, against Emmanuel, and we think Emmanuel might be a tad short here.
Yeah. Yeah. Always looking to bet against those favorites.
So that's a look at the Canadian turf. We talked about these horses towards the outside, probably flashing a little bit of speed because of their draw too. So that's going to be tough for a horse like Steady On, who can sit a little bit, but might have a tough time trying to sit from way out there. Up next, my friend, it is the Here Comes the Bride. And we saw a really impressive performance from Cairo Consort last time
Oh man, yeah.
in that sweetest chant. Cairo Consort was a horse that on paper in that particular race was the favorite, but like didn't have speed figures that were dominant over the rest of the group. And so she looked like a kind of beatable favorite in there. A horse that's like, yeah, you know what? She's a shorter price, and there's a couple other horses in here that we can play. And what ended up being weird about that race was she misses the break, spots the field like 10 lengths early on. We can watch it. And Mally Moo, who was a horse who closed really impressively,
did the opposite.
And Mally Moo ended up on the lead, which was I was not expecting Mally Moo to be on the lead at all. Sweet Lou's Got Aces was also in that race.
Yeah,
They're the
I definitely did not want that.
No, because you like Sweet Lou, right? So the 7 is Cairo Consort, not in the picture. Just completely missed the break. And then we get Mally Moo, who ends up right on the lead with Sweet. Go ahead.
I didn't think Mally Moo was going to be that close up.
And it changed the complexion of the race.
Closer. Right. Yep. It changed the whole dynamic of the race. And you see the jock change this time going to Joel Rosario, which it looks like they're not going to want the lead here.
Take her back.
They're going to sit off. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Just don't be on the lead.
Joel, do
I
what
think
you
Mally
do.
Moo's
Take
got
her
a big
back.
shot.
I agree.
I like Mally Moo.
Me too. I want different tactics for Mally Moo in here. And
yes,
honestly, you will very rarely hear me get mad about an aggressive ride or being more forwardly placed. But in this particular case, I just didn't think that was the tactics that the horse wanted. Now, I understand you got a good start. You didn't want to, I guess, grab a hold and take this horse all the way back, but
It
you
wasn't
basically
necessary.
ended up battling with Sweet Lou's Got Aces all the way around, and then neither one of those horses had a shot.
Right. They dueled themselves into submission, as
And
they say.
here's Cairo Consort now coming into contention with the
It's
field
way, way back.
after missing that, and then gets a beautiful sort of split right here, right? Moves between and then tips to the outside. Like that was nice. And still has to get by a couple horses, though, who got the jump. This Heavenly Sunday horse was 2 for 2 and looked good on paper, too. She blew right by and then was geared down. That was really impressive. She's a nice filly there. But again, from a value-based standpoint, to me, I got to give Mally Moo another shot because looking at this race, we have 3 first-time U.S. imports. All 3 of them are coming off layoffs. So for all 3 of these horses, we haven't seen them since they were 2. Same situation that we talked about with the other one earlier. These horses have been off from August, September, and September. All of them have now turned 2 to 3, and they're all coming over and having to run in a different style of racing. And they're going to probably be close to the same price-ish. I don't know if they're really going to offer all that much value in this race, win or lose.
I don't think so.
So again, like we eliminate them as like, are they going to be playable? Maybe not for me in this race. I want to watch them, see what they do, and then we'll be able to kind of get a better feel and a better gauge for them moving forward. And that just brings us kind of by eliminating other horses to Mally Moo, who,
Yep.
if this is a horse that's double-digit odds, and we can maybe read into it with Joelle coming on, okay, hey, Joelle, bring her all the way back. Let's just stay out of traffic, kind of tip her to the outside or find a seam late and come running. And we want you to do your best and just be the strongest closer that you are and see how close you can get. Like that's what I want to see from her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
And
you can even see in Mally Moo's first race at Dundalk, they didn't go to the front.
no,
That's why it was so crazy that I'm pretty sure those weren't the instructions on February 4th.
yeah, because
To go to the lead. I think they just ended up there, and all he had to do was just kind of ride it out, and that's what happened. I just think this horse is better with a target.
me too. Mally Moo feels like the value in here. No real knocks on Cairo Consort. And you got these 3 imports who none of them would shock me, but I'm not really in love with any of them. Would
What
you
about
give Sweet
American
Lou?
Rocket?
Yeah, is that American Rocket? First time on the turf. American Rocket wanting to get on the turf in the career debut, broke the maiden that day. And then in both the Spinaway and the Frazette, she was super playable. She's kind of a little bit quirky. Then in the Goldenrod, let's just put a line right through it. That race has actually come back pretty live. And
Yeah.
it's one of those races where if she was 4th, beaten like 5 lengths, it would bother me. This doesn't bother me. When a horse is just eased, it's so bad that it's a toss race. So it's kind of like a starting over point with her. Do you give her a look in here?
I'm on the fence.
Her
I
dam won on
really,
turf.
it's one of those things where this horse is talented, has talent, but hasn't really shown it.
Yeah.
There's flashes like when the horse bolted to the basically took a right-hand
And
turn out of the gate at Saratoga
and I'm
and then came flying at the end, you know, uh, behind Leave No Trace and Wonder Wheel, who are,
because
you
she
know, at
was
the
supposed
top
to
of
run in the
that
Breeders'
division.
Cup, right? And then she scratched.
Hmm.
She was entered because I believe Sarah El Badwi, our friend, she's like this
Yeah,
filly for a while.
she liked that horse. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, and I'm glad you were sort of dancing around this point. And that's what's scary about her is that there's a big race in there coming.
Yep.
And you want to be there like on this day when she's 10 to 1 or 12 to 1. You want to be there before it happens and not after. And that's why she's always intriguing to me when she shows up, because like if she pops in this race at a big price, let's say this, I would be more inclined to throw her in maybe even than some of the import horses at double their price.
Yeah.
I give her a little bit of a look. If you're spreading out in this race, I'm fine with her. Because yeah, it's like
I mean, look at the races that she was in. The ones that she didn't win. Leave no trace.
is going to be one we're going to see in just a few races. In the Devona
Right.
Dale was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, behind the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner Wonder Wheel.
Wonder Wheel, who finished second that day.
Yeah,
Then you have Chocolate Gelato, who's no slouch.
no, and she was a major player in the Breeders' Cup also. Like
And
she was 4-1 that day. Chocolate
right.
Gelato coming off
And
of her
and
back
and
to back
Leave No
wins.
Trace was third in that race also. And
Yeah,
then, who's your filly, who's very precocious early, won a quite a
her
few
wins have been
races,
awesome.
Right.
Yep,
So, and Pretty Mischievous was third in that race. So,
yep.
I mean, this horse has been facing, kind of the top echelon. It's just a matter of, you know, uh,
Turf now, you know.
turf, and can this horse get it together mentally
Yeah,
to
no,
kind
you're
of
right.
put it all together.
And maybe now, from like we keep talking about in a lot of these races with these horses that are now 2 to 3, maybe she's grown up a little bit, right?
Well, yeah,
Maybe
Bill
she
Mott,
and
he's notorious for doing things like this, switching surfaces
mhm,
and then having the horses just,
maturing.
rip off wins. So,
And she's
you know,
worked on the turf a couple times too, so she's at least familiar with the surface now, and he's at least seen it to think, yeah, there's enough there. And the way she's traveling over it, and we know she's bred enough for it. Like again, we looked at this pedigree a second ago. There's no monster turf breeding, but her dam won on the turf in her only turf try, and she does have a winning turf sibling. And she's classy because she's a half to Frank's Rocket. So she checks lots of boxes for a horse who's going to be, double digit odds in this
yeah,
race if,
I
if
mean,
you're
this
looking for
is that's
value.
that's what long shots are made of. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah,
Finding, instances like this where the company lines are really, really good here. This horse hasn't embarrassed herself at
no,
all, and comes into a race that seems to be kind of wide open on paper.
it does
So
because like we we have the one horse Cairo Consort who is super honest, but again, she's not like an overpowering standout. Like if she wins, she's the most likely winner. Then we have 3 horses who we don't really know what to think about as far as their form because we haven't seen them in 6 months and we haven't seen them since they were 2, and they're all coming into new barns and shipping into a new country. And like in a race like this with wild cards, I think we've talked ourselves into a couple pretty good ones in the 2 and the 3. American
I'm
Rocket
down with
and
that.
Malibu with some nice value here. And Barry and I will be up part of the Stable Duel show on Friday morning with Matt DeSantis. These are great horses, in Stable Duel at 12 and 15 to 1. They don't cost anything in your Stable Duel lineups to use, and you can really start to build up in the other races. So it's a fun race. Race number 9. As we turn the page to the Gulfstream Park Mile, we had Charge It was super impressive, making his 4-year-old return. Charge It was the winner of the Dwyer last year. He won that race by 23 lengths, and he was second in the Florida Derby in just his 3rd start. I mean, this horse has a lot of ability, Barry, and this is a good spot for him to kind of test it to see, okay, was that last race just again, a good spot where you just really keyed up and ready and you just beat a much softer group. He'll at least get some competition in here with, some horses that have been in good races and have faced good company. You and I like the horse named Endorse, who's right next door. Endorse is sharp, and he's at least like a good grade 3 type measuring stick horse.
Yeah, I mean, once the year turned into 2023, all those 3-year-olds are now 4-year-olds, and now they're running against a lot older horses.
Yep.
You know, tested types
Mm-hmm.
that have gotten us some battles. But that being said, I just don't see how Charted can lose unless he just completely is a no-show, which
Regresses.
yeah, and I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
think even if he does a little bit, he still could probably win this race.
yeah,
Um,
he could have a really good year this year. He could have a really nice year in the older division. Like he could be. He's a nice
there's
horse.
nobody else. I
There's
mean,
he's yeah.
who's out there?
He's super lightly raced. He's got upside. He has some speed, but he's shown that he can sit off a little bit. And in this particular race, he's proven at Gulfstream Park, if you just toss his Kentucky Derby, everything else is good.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to knock him. And as you've been listening and watching this, we've in every race tried to beat the favorites for the most part. This one that is a little difficult to do so. The horse to me that's intriguing overall is just Nitrous Channel as a horse.
Mm.
I don't mind his form. The only thing is that race has that the horses he beat last time out, they didn't come back and run very well. I don't know how strong it is. He's got a little bit of upside. I don't knock anything he's done. He'll make the third start off the long layoff. So he probably has a step or two forward, but his step or two forward and Charge It taking a step or two backward probably would still probably have Charge It above him, like of all the other horses in the race, he was the only one that I could even find like a lot of positives to. These are not bad horses, but like a B plus effort from Charge It probably crushes this group, right?
Yep, that's what I was thinking. I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to get past
Me
Charge It
too.
and Endorsed here,
Yeah.
in the top two spots. And it'd be interesting because just to see what the other tactics are from the other riders and how they're going to ride this race. But in the end, I just think Charge It is just better than these.
This is a good spot for him to take a nice
Yeah.
little step. And I expect him to have a really good year. This is the start of the pick 5, that 10th race. The 11th race is the grade 3 Honey Fox. This one kicks off your late pick 4. If you're someone who plays those coast to coast pick 5s, the races this week are the 12th, 13th, and 14th. And then they're the 5th and 6th at Santa Anita, the 2 stakes races early on the card at Santa Anita that are both very good. So, Barry, let's get to the late pick 4 in the grade 3 Honey Fox, mile on the turf here for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. Speak of the Devil was so impressive last year, first time in North America, and it was on that Churchill Downs turf course. It looked like she was poised to have a big second half of the year, and then obviously
Gone.
something goes wrong because she shows up favored in the Just a Game, a race that has come back strong. Regal, Glory, Wakanaka, and an Italian, they all had really nice second halves of the year, and they're very nice. But Speak of the Devil just didn't fire. It was more that there was a problem. And now she's been off since, but she shows back up here. And you have to wonder, with horses like this, when they ran so well on that Churchill turf course, I'm always a little like, that was a weird turf course. Maybe there was something about that, but she does have ability and she was classy before coming to North America. You can see some of her form over in France, which was very good, right? She was Group 1 place. She was a group stakes winner. So she's like a very, very classy individual.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely the horse to beat.
Yeah.
It's just so weird when you get a horse that runs really well first time out and then throws in a dud the next, a month later. It's like, what do you take away from that? I
Yeah.
really don't know, because it's so far away from the form that she had, in 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, she was running on a regular
10 months ago.
schedule.
Yeah. So 10 months ago was a good race. But we're talking about like what, 18 months ago,
Yeah.
20 months ago for when she was, you're right, like in actual, like consistent racing form.
That's where my concern is. Obviously this horse is talented, but what are
I
you
mean,
really
look,
going to get on the
yeah.
layoff? And she's going to be a minuscule price.
And she's
And
not fast early,
no,
right?
and that's the other thing. She's a closer, and that's got to work against her in a lot of ways. This field isn't that great, which helps and does factor
Yeah.
in her favor. But I mean, I guess the other Chad Brown, the one, has to really force the issue here and try to just get on the engine and fly,
Yeah.
to set it up for
For Speak of the Devil,
Speak of the
or at
Devil.
least
Yeah,
make sure nobody else gets out front and slows things down. At
right.
least keeps that one company enough. A horse maybe like Sweet Enough right next door would try to show a little bit of speed. The four
Outside
white,
horse too.
the outside horse is nice too, and I will tell you, she's a nice filly. This is
Hmm.
gonna be a little much from that way out there, because it's a tough post, but she's always been good. And the only issue she really had was when she just couldn't put a couple races together, and now if she's able to string 2, 3 together, this is a nice filly. She won first time out. She came back and won a stakes at Keeneland. And then in her third, all of the horses she lost to were just incredibly sharp at the time. Like all of them. She lost to Marissa's Lady when Marissa's Lady was rattling off this 5-race win streak, or I guess a 4-race win streak, and then won another one. She came back and she lost to the horse that Marissa's Lady beat in that race, Matarea, in the 8 Bells, and that was coming off a little layoff, and then a race that sent her to the bench. And look how strong this race has come back. Wicked Halo had a really nice rest of the year. Pretty Birdie has come back and run well at the end of last year and this year. You had Gerrymander, who came out of this race and won a graded stakes race. You actually had Awake at Midnight, who did some really good work in Southern California, was multiple graded stakes placed out there now. This was a strong group, and she's got some ability from a value standpoint. I just like, she'll get the jump, and she's a great price. Like, I don't think she'll be 15-1. If she is, that's too big. I don't know if she can win this race, but she's got some upside here. What about who's the other one? Right, Frost is at least worth mentioning, right? The Mott horse who came off a long layoff and won. She should sit close, and she's got some ability here too.
Yeah, that one definitely. It's just so crazy with horses that look like that. Is I never know what to do with them
On the
because
next race, especially.
right, because
this race,
they're going to get bet, right? This horse is going to get bet, second choice most likely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it just doesn't seem like this is the right spot for this horse to win again.
No, I agree with you.
And I really, it's just I couldn't pinpoint exactly why, but it just doesn't feel like this horse fits in this race. I mean, just from a pace scenario standpoint, it's like, well, if you drop all the way back, you're going to be forced to go up against Speak of the Devil in the Lane, who's probably a better finisher.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to get too far behind, but you don't want to be too close because the pace looks like it might heat up here.
I agree. Now, as we continue to look through it, the 1 and the 2 will probably be forwardly placed. White Frost shouldn't be that far out of it. Wants to at least get the jump on, a horse like Speak of the Devil. Mm-hmm. And towards the outside, the 11's pretty much forced from way out there to go. Yep. She at least has to go out there. So now, the 9's coming out of sprint races. And so the last time she was a mile, she was right on the lead. So now they should be going pretty. You're right. She might kind of be a little bit undervalued, or a little like not great value in this race based on
like kind of lost in the shuffle of the pace scenario. Like,
is that she's too short in this spot, and the way it might set up better for Speak of the Devil than her. As like, I think I prefer Speak of the Devil and looking at another long shot or two than even White Frost. The more we talk this out, so.
Yeah, Miss Yearwood is the one that caught my eye at a price. Just steadily on the improve. Yeah, the 8 it had 2 nice races on the grass before going to the bench for a little while. Some, good steady turf works, going all the way back to January. I think this one might be sitting on a good race. This race is a little strange. And I think that's the trip horse, basically.
One that could fall into a nice spot.
Yeah.
Miss Yearwood. So there's a look at race number 11 at Gulfstream Park. That's the Honey Fox. As we keep rolling along to the 12th, 13th, and 14th, the final 3 races on the Saturday card. First up is the 12th race, and this one is the Devona Dale. We've got 5 that exit that forward gal that was won by Red Carpet Ready. She defeated Undervalued Asset and Atomically and Positano Sunset in that race. You'll also have, to the outside, Leave No Trace making her 3-year-old debut. In her 4 starts, she didn't do a whole lot wrong. Her only, like, her most poor performance was in the slop at Aqueduct on a track that was a little bit quirky that day. She ran well in the Breeders' Cup. She was second. She won her first 2 starts sprinting. How do you see this race, Barry? As red carpet ready, 3 for 3 will likely be favored in here. She's 2-1 on the morning line.
Yeah, I'm not really fond of that one either. I mean,
Yeah,
if this is a really
she got a
competitive
perfect
race.
trip
She
last time
really
out.
did.
She got the jump on all the other horses in that race. She sat perfect when everyone else either just was a little bit slow or behind, or maybe didn't get the type of trips that they wanted. And I could see a lot of those horses being more aggressive in this race now and not
Yeah,
wanting to sit behind as much. Like,
exactly. I think
um,
that's gonna happen because they have to get a lot more
like
aggressive.
Undervalued Asset and Positano Sunset, both the horses that were behind her in their race and they were farther back than I think they would have wanted,
Yes.
especially Undervalued Asset. I think they're going to get more aggressive here.
Yeah, and that'll do him a lot of good, I think. A horse like Leave No Trace really kind of jumps out to me a little bit just because of the company lines, the way this
Me
horse
too.
ran last year. Um,
She
Clearly
can
this is
sit
this
too.
she yeah, exactly. And having everybody inside of her, um, kind of seeing what kind of happens is a good thing. Tyler will get this one placed correctly, and it's just a matter of if she'll be able to finish it off. But I like the way she finished up her races last year. Um, yeah, I think that one has a big shot.
Me too. I like her. I like her quite a bit. It's funny. I actually picked her in my. I'm in a fantasy horse racing league, and she's on my team. I like her
There you
quite
go.
a bit. So I hope she has a good year this year and a nice couple of races coming up. I think she'll get a very nice trip in here. And so if she sits the trip and a couple of these other horses get more aggressive, she could be a nice. If she is 5-1, like 7-2 plus in here, between that and maybe 6-1, that would be fair value because then she could get a really nice trip sitting behind, Undervalued Asset, red carpet ready. Infinite Diamond, I think, is going to want to get aggressive. I wouldn't be shocked if the horse from the rail has to get a little bit more aggressive, either from the rail just to try to get out of there and more forwardly placed and not like into some trouble. So I just see this heating up a little bit here,
Yeah, it could fall
Barry.
apart. I mean, if that happens, a horse like Lynx might be
Yeah,
one you want to gravitate to if you think that this pace is just gonna
going to be that
just
fast. Yeah,
supersonic. Yeah.
yeah,
But that horse hasn't run badly at all.
not at all. No,
Just running style kind of compromises a lot, but you can see she was bet down twice to favoritism. Delivered one time going away in a state bred stake. But yeah, that's not a horse to if you're going to spread in this race for any kind of
she's
multis
on
or
the ticket
anything,
for sure.
you got to put the 7 on there.
Yeah, totally agree because she's one of the few that you're really confident that she will come closing. It's just, does she get the trip? Is she close enough when she starts her rally? And is she maybe good enough? Because a couple of these might be pretty nice fillies, so they may be a little tough to pass down the lane. But I don't have any knocks on her links, and she'll reward you with the price at
Hmm
12-1 on the morning line. As we take a look at the Devona Dale 10 3-year-old fillies lining up. Yeah, I liked Positano Sunset last time. She didn't really have a chance with the way the race was. She just kind of got shuffled too far back. I don't know if she's as good as some of the others, but she certainly can run better than she ran in that last race. And she'll be fine value again in here.
Yeah, it kind of broke flat-footed, and it
Mhm.
and it
And
was
then that was just
slow.
it.
Right? Yeah, it was too slow, and the horse couldn't get into the mix. But first time off a decent kind of layoff.
Yeah, she
So
should be
that
sharper.
that yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd expect a improvement off of that effort.
That's Positano Sunset there as Undervalued Asset and Red Carpet Ready will likely be favored in this one, but perhaps beatable as they have to go a little bit longer now and maybe deal with a little more pace in this one. We turn the page to the 13th. It's the Mac Armida. They will go 1.3 miles on the turf in here. Barry and Astronaut has been very sharp since coming into the Tom Albertrani barn and has really improved on the speed figures. Astronaut threw in 200 plus buyers in the last two races and was a graded stakes winner in one of them at 15-1 in the Red Smith. So this is a horse who will be, one of the favorites in this race, probably favored in here as we scroll through the field. Who do you start with in this race, buddy?
I don't know. I'm not really fond of the of Astronaut.
Me, yeah. I mean, I
To
think
the
there are
tune
other
that I
places
don't
to go.
even think that horse is going to be favored. I
So
think the
you like
one
the one, maybe
is probably going to be the favorite.
highest
Um,
honors?
yeah, just has a better body of work, I thought. Um,
So
I don't regard those California turf races, especially the marathon ones, as that good.
no,
Um, so it's a little sneaky because he obviously runs those long races, but there's only a certain few horses that run in those.
yeah, and
And
they're the
they're
same.
not all really that good.
No, they kind of beat
You
up on
know,
each other.
right, exactly. So I'm not sold on Astronaut. Even at 5-2, I think that's really short.
The horse who's intriguing to me in here is Masterpiece.
Mm.
The two. He was in the Pegasus last time, and we can see he had a pretty tough trip. And
Good.
let's watch him. He was the number 11. So sort of gets squeezed back right at the start, Barry, and he's sort of in between horses. And he's a horse who, is usually going to be coming from the back, but now because of like the squeezing back and wanting to try to get over, now he has to be dead last, which is always
Yeah.
like you can have a closer, but when you're dead last, it's always like, I couldn't have one or two horses beat. Like I'm just gonna have a lot of traffic to overcome or a lot to deal with. And he he tried to move inside. So he's the 11. He's at the back of the pack in here, and we can kind of just skip forward a little bit in the race because it's a little longer. So he's trying to move inside. You can see he's the gray at the back here, but there's nowhere to go. He's got traffic in front of him. He just got a wall of horses here. So he's trying to move in the two path, and there's just really nowhere to go. So he's sort of waiting. He's waiting. And now he starts to kind of kick into gear and he's finding like a little bit of room down there. So watch him as he gets through this seam and as everything gets clumped up, he sticks his neck out and he almost gets third
Wow.
among that wall of horses. He just didn't have the smoothest of journeys after having to be dead last. I think if he can just start his rally a little bit earlier, he should be saving ground in here again. I think he fits better with this group. It's a little bit softer probably than that last group that he was in with no Ivar and Speaking Scout and a couple of the other tougher horses, like a Tone who won. So I don't mind Masterpiece in here at around 5-1 or so.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna get a better, he's got a better post position this time. I don't think he's gonna be as far back as he was. I mean, these horses aren't as fast as those other ones in the Pegasus. So he might lay a little bit closer and it'd be better for him. He'll get a better trip that way.
Yep, that's a look at Masterpiece. You mentioned Highest Honors, who he's sharp, he's honest. Like he's no knocks in his recent races, his recent form. He's been right there in the in Aqueduct, Keeneland, and at Kentucky as we kind of continued throughout the field.
What about a Bond? What do you do with that horse?
I know because he's so he's like one dimensional. He had one or two races where he sat, but then for the most part, it seems like he just wants to go. And his good races were really good, but since last year's race, when he was favored, his form is bad. It's like so bad, and he's taken so much money, but this is a time where he's actually not going to take money, so he might be sort of interesting to include.
Yeah, I don't know. They got to go to the front, right?
Oh, yeah, especially from out there. You have to go. So he's going, and he'll be at least pushing it. I mean, Astronaut doesn't have to go. He'll probably sit.
No, he probably doesn't want those.
He doesn't want to like get caught up, and he'll sit a little bit. But it'll be You
I
know,
mean, if a Bond can get to the lead,
you're right. Because going through this field now,
you
who's
gotta give
pushing
him
him?
a shot, right?
Who's pushing him? Maybe this horse stretching out from a mile is a little more forwardly placed, but if he is in that 8-10 to 1 range in this race with not a lot of other speed, I
You
can
gotta
I can
give him
throw
a
him in a
second
pick four.
look. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How about the 10? That's the other horse that I liked a little bit. Value Engineering. He was second in the William McKnight. He sort of made a big move early.
Hmm.
He was asked for that early move, 3 deep up the challenge at the top of the lane, moved to the lead. But then he was challenged immediately by Red Knight, and he tried to go on with that one. I mean, he was just a clear cut second best that day. We see him a few starts back where he lost to a Tone, and so now that form looks pretty good because we saw a Tone come back and win the Pegasus. So even if he's maybe a little light on class overall, his form has held up. The horses that beat him have come back and have run well. He might be interesting at about 6 to 1.
Yeah, I would kind of want more than
Yeah, maybe
six to one.
a little more value. Um, as we talk out the Mac D Armida, anyone else in here worth mentioning or on your radar?
No, I mean, it's this is gonna be a crazy race because if a horse like a Bond just shows any kind of glimpse of what,
Any bit of liveliness, he
yeah,
could. This
it
is a
could
good
wire this
spot for him.
field, right?
It's making his third start back too of the form cycle, so this could be like his best race back, and he should be a little bit fitter because he went from a mile and a 16th to a mile and a half, and now we get a little bit of a cutback. I'm talking myself into a Bond a little bit more, into just at least using him if he's this 6 to 1 above price for a horse that we know has a big enough race to win this with the right trip. And his trip is just, hey, you're outside, just go. You have to try to get aggressive, see if you can clear this field and then slow things down.
Right.
So that's the 13th race, the one that leads us into the Fountain of Youth with Kentucky Derby points on the line. Fountain of Youth goes as race number 14. Barry on Saturday, and have heard that General Jim may scratch, was sick. There has
Oh
been
no,
some negative reports, which I just don't like because
no,
man, I thought if you were like he to me,
I like him.
I really do like him in this spot. And he was the horse that when we talk about like eliminating and who looks bettable, if you're betting this race, and I can't bet Forte to win. He's looked good training. He's good. He's good. I think he'll run well, but I wouldn't be betting him to win at even money. And and the second choice in this race is probably going to be Blazing Sevens, who's also coming off a layoff that you think will probably need this race for his best and be a little bit better with the race under his belt. So all of a sudden, it sort of takes the first two horses out of the race as being bettable, and I didn't like much else in here. And I really liked that General Jim has proven he can win going longer on the turf. He proved that he can win on the dirt and run well on the dirt. He had legitimate trouble in the race on January 1st where he sat behind the lead. He tried to get off the rail and they pinned him in. He couldn't get off. He got stuck behind, and then he ran down a pretty nice horse named Super Chow last time out. So sounds like you were on Jim too. We'll just sort of have to see what happens with him this weekend.
Yeah, that like you said, it's not a good sign. Even just hearing the rumors
Coming into the biggest
is
race of
bad.
his life, right?
One
You
thing about the six horse Blazing Sevens is you'll notice that you never see Chad Brown horses with a lot of early speed. They're
mhm.
always off the pace. And that is like an automatic like demerit on a horse running on dirt going 2 turns at Gulfstream.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just hard to do. I mean, you could prove to be superior than these horses and do it, but we don't know that yet. And this horse is going to get bet down.
yeah.
I mean, obviously not as much as Forte, but I'm thinking probably going to be about 2 to 1. and you say Forte is probably about 6 to 5. But there's other possibilities in this race because there's some speed in here. There's a good mix of closers and speed horses. It ends up looking like it's going to be a rider's race, and a horse like, funny enough, a horse that probably will get overlooked even though he won last time in the Holy Bull is Rocket Can.
Yeah. I
He
do. I
might
think he's
get
going to
the
get
same
overlooked too.
trip. Right, he
Yeah.
might get the same trip. I mean, I also like his stablemate, the 3, Shadow Dragon. Um, I mean, that horse just, improved a whole bunch, and I'm not really sure about the distance, but, I could give that horse a shot at a price, getting Jose Ortiz. Not the
Now,
worst thing in the world.
the one that's the interesting horse to me is, I guess there are a couple we can talk out, but is Cyclone Mischief now, because I did not like him at all in his last race in the Holy Bull. I thought he was going to be a little bit overbet, and I liked Rocket Can a lot. We feel like Rocket Can was going to get the trip, and he
Mhm.
did. And it's not like Cyclone Mischief had like the worst trip in the world. He was in between horses in a little bit of traffic. He sort of lost positioning. He just didn't have any late punch, and he backed up. But I sort of like playing a horse like this in the next rate. Like I thought he
Yeah, the
would
bounce
regress
back.
a little
Yeah.
bit. Yes, like the bounce back. And instead of being favored, he's going to be 10-1 in this race. And we know with an A game, like his best effort is pretty good. And he has a little bit of speed, but he can also sit, which he showed us. He ended up beating Litigate, who came back and won the Sam F. Davis. So the
Mhm.
race that he won has at least come back live. It wasn't like he just beat a bunch of nobodies. Litigate came back and won that race. So he's, if we're talking about value and price, I'm I'm warming up to him at like 10-1 or so. If you're looking for others to throw in, because this might be a nice spot, like you said, for him to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, he could fall into a great trip here,
Mm-hmm.
potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if General Jim was, 100%
I would really
going,
like him. Me
yeah,
too.
I would really like him here. But it's a lot of questions. I mean, it's stuff you just got to evaluate right up until post time in some
Because
cases.
Forte is nice and he's looked good in his return and like in his return races. But again,
Yeah, but
he's
how much
not,
better can he be?
and he doesn't need
That's
to be.
that's
No,
my
he,
thing. It's like,
he
how much
can't be
better
that
can he
much
be?
better. And he has bigger plans.
Aspirations, right?
Like Florida Derby and then the stepping stone. He wants to peak for the Kentucky Derby. They want to be ready for the third start off the bench. So they're not leaving it all out on the racetrack right here. So classy, nice. We'll see how he shows up. What do you do with Mage?
I'm gonna say that horse needs some experience.
Yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot to ask to go
Mm.
from that 7 furlong maiden win in just your first start. So it wasn't even like you had a couple races of foundation and seasoning either before you broke your maiden. You just did it right away. Definitely talented. Like put that rival away, but yeah, I mean the pace will probably go through him. He should at least be forwardly placed in here, and probably him
The
and the
10,
yeah the 10 and like the 2.
2,
Yeah, they'll probably be mixing it up, and that's what would've been so nice. Jim could have sat right behind him.
right there. Yeah.
I know, just getting a great spot, so we'll see what happens with General Jim, but Barry, it is a good-looking 14 race card on Saturday over at Gulfstream Park. My friend, I really appreciate you hanging out and, going through all these races, because I know if we're talking Gulfstream Park, we always gotta enlist the services of the sniper. What do you have coming up? We always know about Big Mondays going in circles. What else do you have coming up, either this weekend or anytime soon?
I'm gonna be out at Tampa Bay Downs for the Tampa Bay Derby on
Nice. Doing
the
some work on the
11th.
broadcast with them?
Yes, yes, I'll
Great.
be on there all day. Um, yeah, but popping up here and there.
Barry, my friend. You got to find friends just like this who you can sit up and chop it up on the races with for an hour or so, talk them all out. You help lead me to a few horses. I hope I helped steered
Oh,
you in the right
absolutely.
direction once or twice here or there. So good luck, however you're playing all throughout the Saturday card. And yeah, we'll be going back and forth throughout the day going, yes, on the winners. And oh, what the heck? What kind of ride was that? Or back and forth. So I always love these big Saturdays. And I wish you the best of luck. You and your family have a great one, my friend.
Yes, you too, my man. Thank you.
So if you're listening on the podcast, we have a lot more coming up. If you're watching us on social media, this is it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Make sure to give Barry a follow on Twitter there and check out all the great content and all the stuff that he's a part of.